So episode 6 of From throws a lot of information at us. And while I think a lot of it is just more information that we're not really able to do anything with at the moment, there is at least one thing that I'm going to talk about later that I think they're pretty close to solving. The episode starts off with Jim waking up to Tabitha looking out the window, and when he asks her why she's doing that, she's like, "Oh, I had a nightmare." Which, if you have a nightmare, I don't think the thing to do would be to look outside at the monsters, but that's just me. And then Jim attempts to comfort her, but then Tabitha starts talking about how maybe the townspeople were right and that she should have gotten more help, which, no, she should not have done anything else, because if she went to the cops, then no one would have believed her, and she would have ended up in like an institution or something, so she basically did all that she could. But, there's peer pressure from pretty much everyone, so I guess I sort of understand why she has some regret about how she handled getting sent back to the real world. But then Jim gets frustrated because he was just trying to calm Tabitha down and she wasn't having it. So then they get into a shouting match. And I see both sides to their arguments. Granted, there's a lot of information that we haven't really been given. But I will say that I slightly lean towards Tabitha, since Jim was all mad that Tabitha left to go find Julie, and he's like, "Oh, you just left me alone with Ethan." But it's like, then you just did the exact same thing to try to find Tabitha and left Julie and Ethan basically to get left watched by Donna, so I don't really understand his anger there. And with this scene, we're kind of given some more insight with the frustrations between Jim and Tabitha. And I don't know if it's really going to work out between them or not, since they had divorced in the first place and they tried making things right. But now they're getting into shouting matches, so I don't really know. And to be honest, I kind of wish their storyline had been developed a lot faster, as we're in Season 3, and we don't really have a ton of information on what happened between Jim and Tabitha, as we kind of just have the basics of, oh, their son Thomas died, and then they divorced after that. And I don't know, we're given information about the family, and I feel like we need a tiny bit more background information, like what happened after Thomas died. Was Jim really, just basically abandoning their kids? I don't know, maybe we don't really need more background, but I would at least like them to conclude this arc between Jim and Tabitha soon, as to be honest, I'm just not very interested in it. And then in the scene with Kenny, he mentions what I said in the previous video, that Dale basically just did what someone had to do, and he was an asshole about it, but at the same time, someone had to try the tree and see if it worked. So Dale's death did actually have a use. And then there was a sad moment of Kenny discovering the memorial of both his mom and his dad together. And that was a sad little scene that I kind of enjoyed. And with that being said, though, the rest of the scenes in here with Kenny just kind of felt like filler. I mean, I guess we also learned that he wants to move to Colony House. But I don't know, everything else I was just kind of whatever about. It's just, I don't know, a lot of that kind of just, in my opinion, hurt the pacing of the episode. We didn't really need the scene of Kenny discovering Julie smoking weed. And we didn't really need the scene of Kenny talking to Boyd. It's not like a huge deal or anything. I don't really see anything wrong with those scenes. It just kind of, again, made the episode feel like it was longer than it really was. And then with Fatima, I feel like some of her scenes early on were a bit dragged. There was a scene of Fatima and Ellis talking about going to the hospital to get her pregnancy checked out. And then there was another one of them, starting to go to the hospital. And I feel like they probably should have cut the second scene, as, again, it just felt unnecessary and really hurt the pacing of this episode. Now in the hospital, we learned that Fatima actually isn't pregnant, as they do an ultrasound on her and there's nothing there. And this is something that my girlfriend Cassie has been telling me for a while, so she's pretty sure that Fatima wasn't actually pregnant. And I never explicitly mentioned this in any of my previous videos, but I was always either Fatima's gonna turn into a monster, or her baby's gonna be a monster. And the reason I had been saying that Fatima's probably gonna turn into one of the monsters is that her baby wasn't actually there, or she was gonna have a miscarriage or something and turn into a monster. So I guess in a way I had been saying that, I just hadn't been fully explaining my thought process like I probably should have. But yeah, with this scene, the monster baby theory that everyone had been talking about on Reddit is probably out of the question now. And then in another scene, we learned that Elgin is making a little photo collection of everyone in the Colony House. And then he takes a picture of Fatima, who didn't really want her picture taken, and just runs off. And then Elgin looks at the picture that he took of Fatima, and he sees the monster in the kimono standing right behind Fatima. And then afterwards she appears around him and asks for his help. And then she says that she can save everyone. And this is something we've seen before with Sarah, so I'm a little bit wary of this. That it could very well just be trying to manipulate him and doing something evil. But at the same time, I'm not really getting bad vibes from the kimono monster, so I'm not entirely sure yet. Which I also think it's a little weird that Sarah had been hearing those voices and then seeing the words on her arms. And that plotline's kind of just been dropped. But I guess it's also possible that some entity has just moved on from her and then attached itself to Elgin instead. but I'm not really sure. And I have noticed that the kimono lady has been getting like stronger looking every single time we've seen her. So it's possible that it's like draining the life force of Fatima. But at the same time, I feel like if that was the case, she would probably be like seen by Fatima and not Elgin. So I don't really know. And this plot line, I think it's starting to irritate me a little bit, and I think it's mostly because like this is the second time they've shown a scene of the kimono lady asking for Elgin for help. So I just feel like it could move along a little bit faster. Or maybe if it's like a timing thing where it's gonna like all connect or something with the end of the season, then maybe they should like not include as many of these scenes. And I know I'm sounding pretty negative here about it, but I still think it's like pretty cool and interesting. Again, I think they're being a little bit repetitive with it. So it's just one small issue I have with this. And in this episode, Jade continues his spiraling of trying to figure out the town. But then he sees a vision of dead Tom, who comes in and motivates him, and also mentions to him that he should probably try to sober up if he wants to actually figure the place out. Dead Tom also brings up the Civil War soldier in this, and then Jade also mentions the number 1864 a bunch, as he found this in the bottle of the bottle tree. And it's making me think that the town had something to do with the Civil War, or maybe like the town had first started during the Civil War. But again, this is just a theory, and I could very well be wrong with this. As Tom mentions during this that there's a lot of information that Jade's looking at, and quite a lot of it could mean absolutely nothing. I do think that Jade is really close with his dimensional rift theory, as there's like multiple trees in Camden Lane, with one of the trees being the main tree. And then the town has two of these trees, with one of them being a faraway tree, which would be, in my opinion, make it like the main tree. So it makes me think that like these places are like related somehow. And not only that, but Tabitha is pushed out of a giant lighthouse, and then she ended up in a city with a giant lighthouse as well. So I just think that this information supports Jade's dimensional rift theory, and it sounds like it could be similar to Stranger Things upside down. And then Victor and Henry go down into the tunnels where the monsters live, and Victor's goal is to try to find Jasper and bring him back. And his reason for wanting to bring Jasper back is that he wants to interrogate Jasper and learn more information about the town. And this is something I wish that Victor had explained to Henry before they went into the tunnels, but I guess it's not a huge deal or anything. But it did irritate me a lot how they kind of kept talking. I mean, they weren't like super loud by it, but they were like a lot louder than they should have been in the tunnels. And then when Victor finds Jasper and puts him in his bag, that's when Henry gets the bright idea to say really loudly, "Oh, that's my wife's stuff." It's like, dude, you're shouting with the monsters just right there sleeping. Like, come on, man.
Oh God, it's your brother.
And then after this, what's interesting is that there's a monster in disguise that says to them that Victor had better stop coming down there or they weren't going to let him leave. And it just makes you wonder how they had known that he was down there in the first place. And it's possible that they just had like one monster keeping watch, and then that's why they just had one monster down there in disguise that was just ready for them. Otherwise, it's just maybe this weird like hive-like mind where they just automatically know everything that happens in the town. But at the same time, Victor and Henry are being really loud down there. So it's also very possible that the monster was just waiting there in ambush of them. I'm interested to see if Jasper's actually going to like say anything to them, or if the information that he gives them is going to actually help them like figure out a way out of the town or figure out more about the town. And I don't know if Victor just plans on like just flat out speaking to Jasper, or if he actually just plans on like torturing him or something. And then I like that we saw a lot more of Randall not just being an asshole in this episode. He seems to want to talk more about like what happened when they went in their weird like dormant stage. But Marielle doesn't really want to talk about it. And I'm guessing that next episode, him and Julie are going to talk about it more. But I do worry that Marielle inviting Randall to stay with her and Christy is going to lead to Marielle and Randall, like, cheating on Christy. But then again, I guess it would lead to Christy and Kenny getting together, so I guess it's whatever. I am glad that those weird, like, spooky totem things have been brought up again in this episode. As I think in episode 3 or 4, Jade had knocked down one of those totems. And then it made it seem like something was going to happen from that. But we still haven't really seen anything as a result. But then Tabitha mentions that, like, as a kid, she had nightmares of both the totems and the red stones. So this is probably just more proof that she's one of the important people that had visions of the town before they got there. So at this point, I'm not really sure if something's actually gonna, like, come from Jade knocking down that totem or not. But I still have hope. Especially since Tabitha doesn't really mention if there was, like, a creature in her dream or not, since I don't really know why you would consider those dreams to be nightmares if it's just, like, some totems and, like, red stones. And then there was also those loud footsteps outside the cabin at night when Kenny and them were staying in the cabin, so I feel like there's probably another monster that's out there that's, I don't know, maybe it's going to come in the season finale, I'm not really sure yet. But my point is that I hope that Totem getting knocked down isn't just going to be some nothing burger. But overall, I would say I enjoyed this episode. Yeah, there was like some things I had like, small issues with, like how a lot of the scenes felt kind of repetitive, or how the pacing early on wasn't exactly the greatest. But I still like how that we were given a lot more information into trying to figure out the mystery of the show. And I'm glad we're finally getting close to the resolution of the whole Fatima's pregnancy thing. And to be honest, I'm having a hard time choosing between a 7 or an 8 for this episode. But I think I'm leaning towards a 7 because, the pacing is just... I was kind of bored early on in this episode, to be honest, so I think a 7's fair. How did you guys feel about this episode, though? Did you agree with what I had to say? Do you guys agree with my theories? Or do you think there's something that I missed? Let me know in the comments below, please. Also, be sure to like and subscribe, as I do intend on posting videos like this after every episode for this season, and for any other future seasons of the show. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.